おじいさんのアニメクラブ。
Welcome everyone to episode 2 of OG-san's Anime Club. I am OG-san, and I'm excited to jump right on into today's topics.
1、
86 is 86th, the problem with anime streaming, delisted titles, and a proposed solution.
2、
A spoiler-free look at the first 6 episodes of Akane-banashi.
3、
Yomi no Tsugai and its themes of pairs and duality that are layered into several aspects of this new anime. Let's begin.
レッツゴー。
Anyone who's ever worked in the food service industry has surely seen the dry erase board in the kitchen that may say 86 sour cream, 86 tomatoes, 86 clam chowder. A server who sees this sign knows that it means that whatever's next to that 86 is unavailable. It's out. It's gone. The customer can't have it anymore. With that in mind, we start this segment of OG-san's Anime Club by saying that 86 has officially been 86th, and it makes now a perfect time to talk about a real problem we have regarding anime streaming. The first time meme comes to mind, and I certainly feel for the fans of this sci-fi series, but streaming platforms suddenly delisting beloved anime titles is certainly no new thing. But it is extremely frustrating, especially for people who want to support anime legally and cast their votes via subscriptions here in the West as if to say, keep sending us more anime, please and thank you. What makes it even more frustrating to fans is how anime physical media seems to have extremely short runs that don't get additional printings, like a book. And usually as soon as you realize your favorite show on Crunchyroll is no longer available, it's too late, because the secondary market has boosted the price of these legitimately rare DVDs and Blu-rays. What would have cost you around $40 to $60 is now in the hundreds, and with no other options, what are you going to do? This is not just a hypothetical scenario, as we saw this play out just this week when 86 quietly reached the end of what appears to be a 5-year licensing agreement that didn't get renewed. With no warning, it was pulled from Crunchyroll and Netflix, leading to a mad dash for fans to buy the Blu-rays wherever they could. In less than 24 hours, the complete first season that was listed for under $25 on Amazon was unavailable. Not just there, but also Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Barnes & Noble. Everywhere you looked for it, 86 was nowhere to be found. A quick search on eBay shows Japanese Blu-ray sets going for over $500 and even $600, with free international shipping, mind you. So what are 86 fans left with? Malaysian region-free DVD sets? It doesn't take a genius to figure out that these are bootlegs and are just about as legal as streaming from a sketchy website. There are 2 choices right now for the vast majority of the anime population who are not wealthy: either go without or break the law. And I hate that we're faced with this situation. So who's to blame? Well, if you're listening to the general tone of 86 fans on X, they're blaming the streaming services, wishing that they had at least been given some sort of notice. But are they really the ones to blame? I'd like to pose another point of view. Anime entertainment through streaming is first and foremost a business, and there are many series on Crunchyroll that have been on there for well over a decade and longer. So why not 86? Remember when I was talking about casting your vote through subscriptions? Well, every time you or someone else streams a show on Crunchyroll or Netflix, data is tallied down. Most likely that you started it, how long you watched it before turning it off, whether or not you finished it, whether you watched the next episode or not, if you watched it again, whether you watched it with English dubs or Japanese subtitles, and on and on and on. All of this information attaches value to a product offered on a streaming service that costs them money in the way of licensing and legal rights to provide it on their platform that draws revenue. The most likely scenario, whether the currently passionate and vocal 86 fans will admit it or not, is that it wasn't watched nearly enough in the 5 years it was on Crunchyroll to warrant the cost of renewing the license. I would be willing to bet that the majority of people who are upset that the show didn't get on the watch list had no plans of getting to it anytime soon, but through the effects of supply and demand, they now ravenously want that which they cannot have. That may sound harsh, but trust me, I really do get it, and I empathize. But I've come to terms with this many times myself as I've faced that dilemma of going without or breaking the law. And let me be clear, I do not recommend anyone breaks the law by pirating or illegally streaming anime or manga. I'm a big fan of Initial D, so to speak of another 86, the Hachiroku was 86th without a single word a few years ago, right in the middle of me watching the 3rd stage, and there were no official releases anywhere to be found. Bakuan, a personally beloved motorbike slice of life, is gone without a trace with no way to legally purchase it. Though Outlaw Star now has a Blu-ray you can buy of the complete series, when it first got dropped by Crunchyroll, I searched for weeks for an affordable DVD set on the secondhand market. We don't know what the future holds, but I do want to paint a picture for you. Let's consider if suddenly, as in today, Sword Art Online is no longer available to stream. As of this recording, there are no official versions of Sword Art Online currently in print anywhere to buy. You would be left with the Malaysian bootleg option on eBay, the option of streaming illegally, or the option of going without. It's only a matter of time before beloved favorite shows of mine like New Game or My Love Story get dropped. I already can't find a copy of Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju anywhere, and there was a time when that was at the top of my favorites list. This is a real problem, and I don't know upon whom the blame lies, but I can offer a suggestion. Start collecting physical media. Cast your vote with your money. Why do Blu-rays not get reprints? Because it's not worth it to the company to make another one, for whatever reason, but if they sell out super quick, there's someone in a suit that'll take notice of that real quick, and you better believe that they'll jump on that demand. It's possible that this whole to-do with 86 could either instigate another printing, or maybe even a second season, but one thing I know for sure is that money talks. I don't want to ever be without a show like Rakugo Shinju again. So I've decided to make collecting anime physical media my hobby. Yes, it is costly, but it's something that I love, and I never want to be at the mercy of streaming service licensing shenanigans ever again, and so I pose that as a potential solution. Yes, it would be a matter of a culture shift, because we have such a small supply of physical anime media due to people culturally not buying it as much as streaming it. But you don't own what you're streaming, and you never will. And yes, that means the things that you are long-term renting from Amazon or Apple or anywhere else that you're buying a digital copy of something, one day, it could just disappear. Read the fine print. They can't come and take that Blu-ray off your shelf, though. But there'd be nothing you could do if their app you paid $30 for a movie on is suddenly no longer supported. And with that, let me know what you think about this topic in the comments. Is there any other show that you love that's been 86'd? What's your opinion about the region-free DVDs that you can get from Malaysia on eBay? Can you think of any other alternate solutions that I haven't considered? You can also join in the conversation by sending your thoughts to ojisansanimeclub@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
おじいさんのアニメクラブ。
Akane-banashi just recently crossed the halfway point in the spring 2026 season and is delighting fans with both its beautiful animation and educational backbone. Whether or not you know about the solo storytelling performance art known as Rakugo, you'll get lessons on the history and culture of the art form in every episode. Right from the get-go, the first episode tells an emotional story that gets the viewer invested and creates tension between the characters that continues to intensify week after week. I'd like to take some time to share why I would gladly recommend Akane-banashi to just about anyone looking for a new series to watch. First, let's talk a little bit about the history of the show. From the Zek Studio, this shonen anime story interestingly features a female protagonist named Akane Osaki, who is navigating her last year in high school while trying to become a professional Rakugo-ka like her father. First published in February 2022, this team effort written by Yuki Suenaga and drawn by Takamase Moe is still coming out in Weekly Shonen Jump and, as of this recording, has already got 206 chapters under its belt. So what is this show about? Well, if you don't know, Rakugo is a traditional Japanese performing art in which a single performer kneels upon a cushion before a crowd, and armed only with a fan and a hand towel for props, tells stories and tales, often comical, that despite being about people who lived long ago, still prove relatable and teach valuable lessons even for modern audiences. The Rakugo-ka performs the roles of every character and creates an atmosphere that, when done correctly, is simultaneously engaging, enlightening, and perhaps most importantly, entertaining. There is a hierarchy within Rakugo full of titles and stage names that tell of a Rakugo-ka's educational lineage as well as their skill level and ability to have apprentices of their own. Akane-banashi presents 3 professional levels, starting with Zenza, who are often openers and have responsibilities ranging from setting up the stage to even menial tasks like serving tea to their seniors. You know how OG-san's Animé Club loves taking a closer look at unfamiliar kanji and literal translations to better understand the beautiful animated art we are all here to celebrate. So let's dig in with the first of the Rakugo levels. Breaking apart Zenza, Zen can mean before or front, and Za can mean seat or stage position. So one might be able to read Zenza as opening act. What a fitting title indeed. The next rank is known as Futatsume, which breaks into Futa, which can also be read as ni, and this means two or second, and Me, which means I, but contextually can mean rank or stage. I don't want to get too deep into it, but even the use of the small tsu in Futatsume harkens back to more traditional Japanese writing for Japanese arts beyond Rakugo, like kabuki and sumo. Becoming promoted to Futatsume is a big deal because you would be considered a legitimate performer, and a safe translation of the title would be something like second rank. Understanding this next rank is vital to setting the stage, pun fully intended, for the story being told in this anime. We come to Shinuchi, which is the highest professional rank a Rakugo performer can achieve. This kanji in particular is interesting because of the layered meanings. Let's start with Shin, which can mean true or genuine. Slap this on someone who is the real deal. Uchi can mean strike and hit, but in the context of traditional performing arts, it could mean something like taking the stage. A Shinuchi is a bona fide master of Rakugo, the headliner of the show, the reason we bought the ticket. And now that we understand all of that, we can talk about the beginning of the story with a man named Shinta, who is anticipating, essentially with zero doubts, that he is about to be promoted to Shinuchi. I would like to encourage listeners to watch this for themselves, so I'm electing to present the plot of this show with as few spoilers as possible right now. This show is less about the aforementioned Shinta as it is about his daughter Akane, who absolutely adores her father's Rakugo performances. From a young age, she has watched and mimicked his practice, and has turned her fascination with Rakugo into a possible future for her. The emotion hits hard in the first episode as we see the real world of Rakugo being unforgiving and extremely difficult even for the most worthy of performers. What's most intriguing about this show is that the tension doesn't come from action, but rather from performances and the reactions not just of the crowds, but of particular characters of interest watching these performances. Akane's Rakugo senpai, or a schoolmate or a teacher, will share their interior impressions of how she is learning lessons and applying them on the fly. Peppered throughout these reflections are historical bits of information about the stories being told, as well as the peculiarities of the nature of their performance. I find the show to be highly fascinating because of this, and even find myself taking notes about offhand references like names of Edo-era novelists or even Rakugo titles to seek out more info about these intriguing tales. As of this recording, 7 episodes have been released, and I'm enjoying it so much that I've resolved to purchase this on Blu-ray as soon as it comes out. So, more importantly, how can you watch this? Well, it really depends on where you are, but if you're like me in the USA, you won't find this on Crunchyroll. But you can get this on Netflix, which also, excitingly, offers the English dub. If you don't have Netflix, you are in for a treat, as there is an official YouTube channel called Akane-banashi Global that offers the original Japanese broadcast with subtitles not just in English, but several other languages as well. I would like to spend more time digging into this show on future segments, but they would have to be more spoilery in nature, so I'll hold off on saying more until then. I assure you, I have so much to say about Akane's father that hit me like a brick wall, and it actually made me tear up while watching episode 1. But until that time, I invite you to please share your thoughts with me on this show. Are you enjoying Akane-banashi? Is this your first time learning about Rakugo, or do you have any prior experience with it, like with the anime Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju? I invite you to comment your favorite character on this show, or you can send me any related thoughts via email to ogsansaniméclub@gmail.com, and I may respond in a future video.
おじいさんのアニメクラブ。
Demons of the Shadow Realm is an interesting choice of a localized title for the series known in Japan as Yomi no Tsugai. Yomi, meaning the underworld or land of the dead, and Tsugai, more or less meaning pair, also looks different on paper, as Tsugai is written in katakana instead of kanji, which could lend to a more mysterious meaning of the word open to some nuanced interpretation. The show is full of references to duality, opposites, balance, and yin and yang, so the use of katakana to write Tsugai could carry the sense that there are layers to the word that for now we're going to simply translate as pair. All that being said, I really like the Japanese title far more than the localized English Demons of the Shadow Realm, so I'm going to elect to refer to it as Yomi no Tsugai moving forward unless the show manages to change my mind as the tale unfolds. Currently airing in spring 2026, Yomi no Tsugai is slated for 24 episodes and has 8 episodes under its belt as of this recording. From the Bones Film Studios, this is an anime adaptation of Hiromu Arakawa's manga published by Square Enix's monthly Shonen Gangan. You may recognize this mangaka's name as she is responsible for the influential and beloved series Full Metal Alchemist. As of this month, there are 53 chapters in the still-running manga, and if you'll allow me to make a bit of a joke, I think that if the anime catches up to the manga, we could always call the next series Yomi no Tsugai Brotherhood. What do you think about that? Well, that leads me to discuss the plot a little bit. Unlike my handling of Akane-banashi's first 6 episodes, I would like to speak in a little more depth about this show. So, if you haven't watched Yomi no Tsugai yet, and would like to do so blindly, please pause and return to this segment after you've watched at least the first episode. Otherwise, you have been warned of potential spoilers. Now going back to that joke, we're going to choose to write Brotherhood in katakana, given the option, because it fits for the layered meaning in a show about siblings, twins in fact, who are born in an isolated village in a very ominous manner. One is born at night, and the other separated by day. And this is encouraged so as to enact a prophecy long waiting to be fulfilled. Years pass, and we see the eldest of these twins, a young man named Yuru, hunting and providing for his village while his sister named Asa appears infirmed, small, and locked in a cage for some unknown reason. The first thing that it made me think of was something like the Kumari tradition of believing a young girl is a living goddess until she reaches womanhood. I actually got to see the palace where the Kumari lives in the Kathmandu Durbar Square when I visited Nepal back in 2014. Though it is not expressed that this is the case in the show, it certainly gave me those vibes. Another mystery in this show becomes evident while Yuru is out and about and looks up in the sky to see what he describes as a dragon. To my eyes, it immediately looked like the exhaust trail from an airplane. But there was no airplane to be seen, just the trail amongst the clouds. At this moment, I started to guess that this setting may not be as ancient as it appears. My suspicions were confirmed very soon as the barrier surrounding this isolated village is broken, and we learn just how it's isolated not just by distance, but also years of culture and technology. And that means the difference between bows and arrows and guns. It instantly reminded me of, and is undoubtedly influenced by the M. Night Shyamalan movie from 2004 called The Village. I apologize if you haven't seen it, but it's more than 2 decades old, so I won't walk on eggshells around the plot, but it's very similar as it explores the life of residents in a small village that is intentionally cut off from the outside, more modern world, unbeknownst to the people who live there. The concepts of fear and control explored in stories with isolated and, dare I say, technologically stunted communities are clearly evident in both that movie and Yomi no Tsugai. As this barrier is broken, we see the village under attack by people who have demons under their control, fighting for them. We meet a girl named Gabu-chan, which despite the subtitles calling her Gabby-chan, I can only hear Gabu, so that's what I'll call her. We now get a look at the concept of dual demons when we meet her Tsugai. Here's that new use of pair that we talked about before. I think I'll elect to call them Tsugai instead of demons or demon pairs. It's just not got a great English serval equivalent for the sake of this story. Gabu-chan's Tsugai is called Gabriel, or Gabriel, and he looks like 2 sides of dentures with countless eyes, a terrifying chomping beast that is invisible to normal people that can't perceive Tsugai. So while it's biting people's heads off, separating torsos, or amputating limbs, it looks to everyone else just like an invisible sword slashing people into pieces. This show is actually very visibly gory and violent. It's not really my thing, actually, but the story was so intriguing that I had no choice but to keep with it. Being rated 16+ on Crunchyroll, I would definitely classify this show as R-rated material, so maybe don't let your young kids watch this one. As the Tsugai, Gabriel, is gobbling up the villagers, it's hard to tell who the bad guys actually are, because we meet a girl claiming to be Yuru's actual twin sister Asa, instead of the person hidden away in the village that Yuru thought was his little sister as long as he could remember. Asa is furious and claims that she's come not just to rescue her older brother, but also to kill everyone else who kept him isolated. We also meet Yuru's Tsugai, who for centuries were guardian statues at their village known simply as Left and Right. The more I've watched this show, the more I've loved their conversations with Yuru because they're just as clueless about the outside world as he is. But they are incredibly powerful. Yuru escapes the carnage in the village with a character known as Dera, who has been a regular face as a traveling trader from the land below. Little did anyone in the village seem to know that Dera was actually a part of the advanced world outside. A lot of the comedy in this show comes from Yuru, who's got no clue how to live in modern society, and even gets excited and feels accomplished when he feels he's mastered using a public restroom and washing his hands properly. I also really like the way that he describes cell phones as smoke signals. The point of the story becomes discovering the truth not just behind why Yuru is kept hidden in this hidden barrier village, but also whether Asa is really who she says she is, as well as the mystery of their parents disappearing without a trace on an airplane a few years ago. Asa-chan is able to secure an enemy's Tsugai for her own use, which appears to have the power of making things disappear. So it might be a clue that will help solve the mystery of their parents' disappearance. So that's a part of the story that we'll have to keep an eye on. There are many layers to the real world in which this story takes place, what with secret societies or organizations that have barriers of their own, as well as complicated relationships within those confines. I'm sure they'll get explored as time goes on, but I also wanted to keep with speaking about the curiosities of the language in this show with something small and unrelated that has confounded me for many years actually, so let's go ahead and talk about it. We occasionally discuss Japanese honorifics in Oji-san's Animé Club, but I'd like to touch on the use of the honorific sama regarding people who don't seem to command such a title by station or by occupation. Asa-chan seems a bit obsessed with her older brother, who she refers to as Ani-sama, which would suggest something like honored older brother or esteemed older brother. Sama gives a sense of aristocracy, but in this case, just seems like over-exaggerated admiration. I like pointing these things out because I really don't know of any good English representations of such a way of speaking, so I'd be interested to revisit this question with an English dub when time allows. It reminded me of another use of sama that has always itched at my brain, and that's every time that Vegeta refers to himself as Ore-sama. I'm sorry to switch gears on y'all like this, but I think it's worth discussing. Ore-sama is very unique, so let's break it down. Ore is basically a rough or overly familiar way of referring to yourself as I or me. And curiously, sama tacks on an exalted honorable status. So how do you even begin to translate that into English? Would Vegeta really be saying the great me or I the magnificent one? I forget where I'd seen this translated years back for a completely different character referring to themselves as Ore-sama, but I do remember seeing the subtitle reading My Bad Self, and I thought that that was just the corniest thing I'd ever heard. I still don't really know how I'd approach Ore-sama if I was producing an English dub, so I'd be quite curious to hear your take on this, and also Ani-sama or any other peculiar honorifics in their context. Back to Yomi no Tsugai, I would like to discuss the visuals. It's a pretty anime by rights, but I definitely think the story is greater than the animation. It's certainly not bad by any means, but when I look back on the first 6 episodes I watched, there's really only one interesting visual that stuck out in my mind. When Yuru and Asa, along with Left and Right, are separated from each other by another Tsugai into a world of pure dark and a world of pure light, the characters are outlined with red instead of black in the white world. The only other time I can really think about seeing something like this was in Flying Witch, when sometimes the characters' features were outlined in green instead of black. It's just a curious expression in the art style that I thought was worth mentioning, and I'll be trying to keep an eye out for that in other titles as well. I really enjoyed the opening and the ending themes for this show, and also find them to be interesting choices given the tone and setting of the show. I have to comment on the concept of duality even continuing as deep as with the opening and ending themes, respectively called Tobu Toki by Vondi and Tobu Yo by Yama. You'll notice the word tobu in both, which means to fly. And each one would be called Time to Fly and Let's Fly. These songs both have very catchy melodies with interesting uses of acoustic guitar rhythms. I haven't skipped a single intro or outro while watching this show because I think that they're so beautifully paired with the animation. I'd like to spend a little more time contemplating the lyrics before I speak too much on them, but I certainly enjoy what I'm hearing every time I watch this show. If you can't tell, I'm very impressed by Yomi no Tsugai and can heartily recommend that you watch it. If you prefer not to watch violent content, or if you're a minor, then I can't recommend this show for you. But if the interesting concepts outweigh displeasure caused by gory imagery, as is my stance, then by all means give it a shot. What about you? Have you enjoyed Yomi no Tsugai? Did examining the translations of certain words lead to any more questions or curiosities? Which is your favorite Tsugai in the show so far? You can comment below or send your thoughts via email to ogsansanimeclub@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts so we can turn this show into less of an echo chamber than it already is. Thanks for listening.
おじいさんのアニメクラブ。
Alright, Nakama, with that, we're going to bring episode 2 of the podcast to an end. As an update from the end of episode 1, I have officially caught up on the Dan manga, and I have lots of thoughts that I don't think I can keep to myself. So, I've decided that I'm going to start making some manga segments as well, but they will not be included in the Animé Club podcast. So if you'd like to listen or watch the manga-related segments, I invite you to find OG-san's Anime Club on YouTube, as that's where I will be uploading them. I've also reserved a forum or message board. If people are interested in continuing the conversation in that manner, please let me know. The podcast is now available on both YouTube and Spotify. If there's somewhere else that you'd like to see it, let me know. My wife and I are also finally current on that time I got reincarnated as a slime, so I expect I'll have something to say about Tensura before too long. Thanks so much for spending time with me again today. I hope you've been enjoying the videos on YouTube and would be grateful for any feedback you might have. Please comment and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, because it's the only way to find out what happens on the next exciting episode of OG-san's Anime Club.
楽しいだ。またね。